Welcome, welcome, everyone. Welcome to today's Tellwell Publishing webinar. So glad to have all of you awesome authors joining us again today. And for the next 30 to 40 minutes, we're going to focus on the art and science of cover design. Today is all about cover design. Please leave me a little note in the chat if you can see and hear me loud and clear. And we are here on the chat throughout today's session, ready to engage, answer any questions that you might have. So please fire away. And I always like to start out the webinar by inviting you in the next couple of moments. If you want to give it a think, one thing that you're really hoping to take away from today's webinar, one thing you're really hoping to learn about or to dig a little bit deeper into, let me know in the chat, write it in there. And if you'd prefer to submit a question privately to us, right next to the chat button down there is a little questions tab, and you can use that to submit private questions to our team. And to that end, if at the end of this webinar you have some outstanding questions, or if you're watching the replay later on, hello future, we encourage you to reach out to your project manager at support@tellwell.ca, or you can book yourself in for a phone call with them if you'd prefer that method of communication. All right, so that's pretty much all the housekeeping I have. So just make sure you fire away your questions throughout, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. And without any further preamble, let's just dig right in. So why are you here? Why should you watch this webinar? Plenty of interesting things on the internets to watch and spend our time engaging with. But I think it's really great that you're here, because after watching this webinar, you're going to learn how to successfully navigate the Tellwell cover design process. And what that really means is you're going to learn how to get clear on what you want. And that's a really important first step around researching design trends in your genre, finding inspiration from designs you love, and starting to kind of fully form that vision of what you're hoping to see. And then once you form that vision, tell us what it is you want by taking the time to fill out the Tellwell design questionnaire. And then you're also going to learn how to revise your cover. And there's 2 revision rounds included. So if you need to, you can always make some tweaks to that first draft. So that's from your end of the bargain when it comes to cover design as the author, as the independently published author who sort of gets the final say throughout the process. This webinar is going to show you really all you need to know about your end of the bargain, as I said. And after sort of getting clear on those pieces, I'm quite certain that you're going to end up with a cover design that you love, that it looks totally professional, and most importantly, attracts readers to your book. And, with all the design know-how, skills, expertise from your cover designer, of course, is going to play a big part there. So let's talk about some basics of cover design. All right, so like it or not, books are judged on their covers, right? A good cover design gets people interested in your book. And simple is often best. So you'll notice that the use of large title text, often a singular evocative image, creating an emotional reaction. And that's also because text-dominant covers really stand out on retail sites. So we like to go for a simple, clean look that really attracts the reader to the book. That's what we're looking for when it comes to cover design a lot of the time. Now, I want to encourage everyone to trust the process of cover design, where we start with that preparing and questionnaire, right? Finding inspiration, then sharing your vision in the cover design questionnaire. Then that review stage where, your designer is going to massage your vision into a really great professional product that you can be truly proud of. So you can get excited for seeing that first draft. And after reviewing your first draft, you do get this revision process, right? There's 2 rounds of revisions included. So that's just a very quick sort of introduction to the process of cover design. I'm going to get into that in more detail really soon. Here we have the anatomy of a cover design. Okay, so what does that draft that you get back from your cover designer look like? Well, it's going to have a front cover on the right hand side, the spine up the middle, which will include text if your page count is going to be long enough, and then your back cover, which is going to have that promotional text on it. So we're going to watch a little video later that's going to show the creation of this particular cover design. And we're also going to get into talking about the front cover design elements and also what it means to put together text for your back cover. So let's get into the process. Let's do an overview of what the cover design process looks like. So the first step is to research, find inspiration, and get clear on your vision. Okay, so that's there are so many different directions that we could take your cover design. So it's really important for you to take a little bit of time and try your best to explain to us whatever it is that's most important for you to see in your cover design. So we're really not happy until you're happy. So the researching, preparing, and questionnaring is really critical to getting your design off on the right track and minimizing back and forth during the revision process, which can delay your project ultimately. So we'll speak more about this and the other stages in more detail soon, but rest assured that there's a video to help you navigate the questionnaire in Octavo. And again, once you see that first cover draft, that's not it. You do have an opportunity to review and revise. So your designer, again, they're going to use that wizardry to transform your vision into stunning cover art. And again, I'm going to show a time lapse of that process shortly. Then a draft comes to you for your review in the same PDF format that I showed just a moment ago. And you get 2 revision rounds to request any changes. There's a help video in those task pages in Octavo that helps you understand how the mechanics of actually submitting your revisions. And then one thing I really want to make clear is that nothing gets published without your say here in this world of independent self-publishing. The final say is yours. So we don't publish the book until you sign off on that final cover draft. Okay, so let's start about talking about this first preparation and questionnaire stage. So it is really key to getting your design off on the right foot. You really want to get clear on your vision so that your designer knows what you want to see. I know I've said that a few times already, but again, that's really important because nothing is published without your say, but you do also have a limited number of revision rounds included to get it right. So it's really good to get off on the right foot. So one little analogy I like to use is like planning a vacation. So usually people don't just show up at the airport. They take the time in advance to decide where they want to go first based on how they want to feel, what they want to see and do. Then it's just a matter of getting in the plane, train, car, heading straight to the destination. So you want to plan where you want to go before starting. If you get on the wrong plane or take the wrong road, it's going to take some extra time and money to get yourself back on the right track. So that's why we take the time to do a little bit of preparation and visioning to begin with. So your custom cover design will be created just for you based on the questionnaire you fill in. So before filling in your questionnaire, you want to start by searching for links to published book covers and spend some time getting inspiration from book designs you love. And then you can paste the links or upload images into your questionnaire. The reason that's a good idea is because when the designer can see your vision, this is going to result in the best designs and the happiest authors because it takes a lot of the guesswork out of the process. And it really allows the designer to spend their time bringing your vision to life, which is going to minimize the amount of time you spend going back and forth revising the design. And if you show us just about any style, we can work within it. Our designers are tremendously talented and they can pretty much anything you want to see on your design, they can pretty much make it happen, with maybe the exception of some like very, very specific details. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that means shortly. We'll base your design on your inspirations, the vision you describe, and the themes in your book. So providing images yourself is entirely optional. You don't have to provide images. We can source the stock imagery for you. If you do choose to provide images yourself, you want to make sure you have the necessary permission to use them. And so in the cover design questionnaire task in Octavo, there's a little help video that will walk you through the process of filling in your questionnaire. It'll, describe each question and what they mean, and how to fill them in. So that's the vision. That's talking about preparing for what the design's really going to look like. Let's talk a little bit about the back cover as well. So the front cover and the vision and the design, which your designer does the legwork for, that's really to kind of lure the reader in. And I like to think of the back cover as being that piece that seals the deal, right? It's that author bio and the book description that kind of hooks the author, or hooks the reader in. So the author bio answers some simple questions like, who are you? What have you done? What do you like to do? Why did you write this book? Okay. And the book description, you want to write the book description short, sweet, snappy. And again, you want to lure the reader in. So you catch them with a bit of a hook. You provide them with some context behind why the book is written. You maybe introduce your characters, or perhaps you introduce yourself as a if it's a nonfiction, you might introduce yourself or the topic of the problem that you're trying to provide a solution to. Perhaps you would introduce that conflict if it's fiction, or again, going into asking perhaps the reader, are you having this problem? Here's the solution for you, kind of thing, if it's a nonfiction. And then ending with a little bit of a cliffhanger, right? You want to end it with something that leaves the reader wanting to find out more. That's, again, the point of the front and back cover. The point of the cover of the book is to get somebody to buy the book. So you want to try to make it attractive, luring, right? And the back cover text on the back cover of your book, that is also going to be posted to your book's online listings. So when your book is eventually published and you see the listing on Amazon, when you see a book on Amazon, there's an author bio and a book description typically there. That text comes from what you put on your back cover. Give the text a final careful proof and submit it through your questionnaire. And Tellwell cover design service does include a complimentary in-house back cover edit as well. So all that text you submit for the back cover, it gets edited in-house. Just like a proofread, we don't change the context or the content. We just make sure it's free of any typos or errors. So to take advantage of that, you want to make sure when you submit your questionnaire, you're submitting your finalized book description and author bio that's ready for that final proofread. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the scope of cover design. I sort of introduced this a little bit earlier, but designers typically start by working their magic on existing stock imagery. Often this is sourced from a giant library of royalty-free images through Adobe, stock.adobe.com. You can browse through their library. You don't need to purchase the license to use any of the images. We'll take care of sourcing that stock imagery for you, provided that it's a standard license level. We wouldn't be able to pay like hundreds of dollars to get some of the very expensive ones, but there's within the standard license library, there's countless photos. And so this is going to include sort of a finite amount of Photoshop work. So taking the images and manipulating them and combining them with beautiful fonts and cool symbolism and things like that. But there is a limit to the specificity of details possible. It's not the same as a custom illustration, although we do that too. And I'll talk about what the difference between design and illustration is momentarily, but know that design, we're working with existing design elements that we can readily source for you. So if something that you want to see in your design, we can't find that in existing imagery, then it has to be, drawn from scratch. And that's what an illustration would be. So the result of our standard cover design service is always eye-catching covers that are like way more than the sum of their parts. Sometimes I do hear authors, maybe they're a little bit like, oh, really? It's just stock images. And then they see the final process and they're like, whoa, that's actually a lot more than just like pasting some text and some photos on a template. And I'll show you that process in just a moment. And before we get into the little video time lapse, let's just look at a couple of amazing covers from Tellwell authors that we've designed in recent months. So here are some different examples of all the different amazing cover designs you can get just from taking existing imagery and taking it and combining it into a cohesive, really beautiful piece of art, really. So here's another set of them. You can see here's a few kids' book ones as well here. And yeah, so really, really quite spectacular. So how do they do it? Well, let's watch a little video, and I'm just going to sort of narrate along here. So allow me to bring up this video. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so this is, it's going to go really fast. So this is a time lapse of the creation of that cover design we saw way back at the very beginning of this webinar. Okay, so this author had a very specific idea of the details he wanted to see in his cover. And I really like to show this video of this cover and these instructions because this is really as specific as is possible to get within the scope of Photoshop work. So we're kind of seeing here the limits of what's possible. And you can see from this video just how much work goes into getting all the details just right. And as we'll see, the finished product looks really great and follows the key principles of good graphic design, which is something that you have to keep in mind, that your designer is also working within the constraints of like what actually does look good and what sort of follows principles of good design. So there are 3 key instructions here that the author pulled out based on the detail of his book. So the author in the questionnaire, he mentioned a night shot of Vancouver with the Vancouver Convention Center. He mentioned a futuristic detective's cop car in metallic blue in the foreground, and a silhouette of a man in black wearing a black Stetson hat beside the cop car. So key piece here is that all of those instructions allow room for the designer to collaborate on that and use what they have available to them to meet the author's vision, but they're not completely like handcuffed by very, very specific instructions. So if the author say they wanted to see a very, very specific type of person's traits and features in a less common location than the Vancouver Convention Center, it's like a fairly iconic location and there's lots of existing photos about it. So, and if he had a very, very specific way he wanted the car to look, so note that the designer is just taking a general instruction, a futuristic detective's cop car. They can then sort of take that and play with it and go in whatever direction that they want to. And, you know, I always feel good for the, you know, it's always great when the designer is able to really allow their creativity to really shine through, right? So yeah, again, we are to a certain extent limited by the stock imagery available to us. There's a lot of it out there. And for a highly original design with very, very specific details, we can recommend a custom cover illustration, which I'll talk about shortly. But for now, let's sort of check out, let's just watch them sort of finish off here, all of the details. So you can see that they're really, they're a lot of sort of little just final, you know, you can see she's adding the silhouette now, making all these kind of final little tweaks that really gets all of those elements in there, while also looking like it would be really easy to make this look really hokey. And you're going to see by the end of this, it's actually going to look really cool. And it's funny, it's almost like at this point, there's almost some suspense in this video. You're like, oh, I don't know, like, how are they going to pull this off? Like, I don't know if they're really going to pull this off. It's not really looking that, like, I'm not really convinced right now. And then all of a sudden, as the last few elements come together here, it's just like gets like 1,000 times better. So, cause like even the lights right now at the top of the cop car look a little bit, they're so. But in just a few moments, we're gonna see it like just come through really nice. So here we can see, so here's the combination of like really picking that really appropriate font that really suits. So we got kind of like a Blade Runner style font going on there. And a few last minute sort of adjustments. And here we go. So you can see, yeah, once you get that, and I love this final touch of just sort of bending the back cover image around the convention center. And then all of a sudden, whoa, what happened there? We have like this really, really cool, beautiful cover design that's like, again, much more than the sum of its parts. And so this is that same image that we saw. And then they upload it to Octavo, export the draft for your review, and then you go from there. So that was that same draft that we saw back at the beginning of this. So let's bring back up our slide deck. Here we go. Okay, so I hope everybody, so there you can see at the bottom left here, that's the final piece. So yeah, I love that cover. I think it's really cool and a good example of the author's vision and the designer's expertise really working together. Really, really awesome. So custom cover illustration. So this is different. This is where you have like a really complex and really unique vision of your cover, plus you have some very specific details incorporated in your cover, or maybe you just simply really love the look of like a hand-drawn illustration. Then what you're looking for is a custom cover illustration. So that's an original piece of artwork that's created specifically for your book. So if that's not already, if you're watching this webinar and you're creating an illustrated kids book and you already have purchased illustrations through Tellwell, we're going to use one of your interior illustrations for your cover design. So you don't have to worry about this. But if you've written like a fiction book or you haven't otherwise purchased illustrations, you can add a custom cover illustration to your package if you'd like to go this route instead of the sort of standard cover design route. Typically, it's starting at $400 for that original piece of complex art, depending on the detail desired. So you can reach out to your project manager at support@tellwell.ca if you're interested in that. Okay, so let's chat a little bit about revision rounds. So we just saw that initial draft being created by the designer, and that then gets sent to the author. And so the author has the opportunity to request revisions at that stage. No matter how much preparation you do, you may still want to request some revisions upon seeing your first draft, and that's totally just fine. We get it. You've worked long and hard on your book, and you want the design to look just right, and that's why you get 2 revision rounds included for free. So there are detailed instructions included in the task page in Octavo. The basic order of operations is to download the draft PDF from that task page that you're emailed, use the Adobe Reader comment tools to mark up the draft with the changes you want made, being sure to proof the front, spine, and back cover of the file, right? Don't just look at the front cover. Make sure you also take a careful look at the text on the back cover as well. And then you can save, upload, and submit the revision file in that same Octavo task, following the instructions included therein. And just a final note, I mentioned this before, the spine text of the book. If you're writing perhaps a children's book, if the page count is less than 100, we may not be able to include spine text on certain distributors, on certain print templates. So hardcover, typically you'll always see the spine text, but with paperback, we may not be able to include spine text based on what the printer's specifications are. So if you don't see spine text on your book, that will be why. Okay, so we are nearing the conclusion of this webinar. And before we wrap up, let's talk a little bit about the timeline. So we've sort of gone over the basic order of operations from preparing, submitting your questionnaire, seeing an initial cover draft, submitting revisions, and finally approving your final draft. So how long does that all take? Typically, you're looking at around 2 to 3 weeks for the initial draft. Then you're going to look for about 1 to 2 weeks for each revision round. Then once you approve your cover and also the interior draft, that's a whole other can of worms that's happening at the same time, right? Everything inside the front and back cover. That's the interior design process. So once you've approved both the cover design and the interior design, then we'll create print-ready files, and that process takes about 1 to 2 weeks. So if, say, you had 2 revision rounds, the whole process would take around 5 weeks to around 4, 7, 9 weeks. So around 5 to 9 weeks total in terms of when it's in Tellwell's court, plus however long it takes you to submit revisions when the ball is in your court. Sometimes the timelines are very rarely longer than this. Sometimes they are shorter than this. It's based on our current workload at any given time. So yeah, and life happens. We understand you won't always be immediately available to complete the tasks assigned to you. So that we don't force you to submit your revisions according to any sort of timeline. So that's why we can't guarantee a specific endpoint for the cover design. But this is generally what you're looking at, plus the time the ball is in your court. So that wraps up the content I have for you all today, talking about cover design. I hope you got a lot out of today's session. If you have any outstanding questions, please feel free to reach out to us at support@tellwell.ca. And if there's any questions in the chat that we haven't yet gotten to, we'll be sure to get you an answer. Absolutely. So again, also if you did want to have that sort of in-depth conversation with your project manager, you have some questions you want answered in real time before continuing, please feel free to book yourself in for a call using their online calendar. Absolutely. And lastly, just after I end this, you should be sent a little link to a webinar survey. I'd love if you wouldn't mind taking the time to fill that in. Let us know how we did today. Let us know how we can improve these webinars, because that's ultimately what we really want to do. They're here for you, right? They're here to make sure your publishing process is as smooth as possible. So if there's a way we can improve this for you, we'd love to know about that. So thanks so much for your time, everyone. I'm going to close the session now, and wishing you all a very wonderful rest of your day and a great publishing process ahead. So take care, everyone. Bye-bye.